to our Eminae CEO Forum today. My name is Winnie Benjamin, co-chair and Eminae. Am I still on? Yes, okay, yes. My name is Winnie Benjamin, co-chair and Eminae Education Committee member, and also a member of the advisory team. Today, I'm going to introduce to you what Eminae is all about. Can we move to the next slide for a minute? So we want to talk about what is the Eminae Network. Eminae Network is comprised of an exclusive group of elite and trusted business and management consultants that advise and educate companies seeking either a growth or an exit strategy. And so for that reason, why we encourage the CEOs to attend, because it's specifically geared to enlightening buyers and sellers in the merger and acquisition space. Today's topic from the series that we run under this category is the Making Acquisitions Palatable series, and it is today's talk is identifying brand and marketing visibility before buying. The panel session is approximately 60 minutes, but we are remaining to about an hour and 25 minutes to hear from our audience inputs and questions. So that we are asking that you share your comments and questions in the Q&A box as we go along, because we are hoping that you stay on to also take it to a really dynamic end. Right now, we are live right now on Facebook. So we are also asking you to put your questions there at this time. I am going to introduce to you our awesome moderator of this session. So our moderator is Niki Jones. She is the founder and CEO of Niki Jones Agency, Inc., which is an award-winning public relations and digital marketing company with offices in New York, the Hudson Valley, and Austin, Texas. Niki has more than 22 years of experience in strategic planning, operations, sales, marketing, advertising, project management, and public relations. Niki has won awards such as the New York Power Women in Business. Niki is a member of Inc. magazine's 5,000 fastest growing privately held companies in America. She's also a member of the American Marketing Association. She currently sits on the board of directors for 2 Orange County organizations and chairs community events in her home city. She has been a guest speaker and also a graduate at the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. She's on the Orange County Chamber of Commerce. She's been a keynote speaker also a keynote speaker for the Goshen Chamber of Commerce Small Business Seminars and the New York State SBDC Small Business Seminars as well. Niki holds a bachelor's degree in fine arts with a concentration in art direction and commercial photography. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome our moderator for this event, Niki Jones. Over to you, Niki.
Thank you so much, Winnie. I don't even know what I can say about that presentation. That was absolutely awesome. So as you know, I can't do this without my other fellow team members. So I'd like to start off by introducing the panelists today. So in no particular order, but in particular order according to the agenda. Brenda.
Hi, I'm Brenda Loube, and I am CEO of BCL Teams. We are a consulting, coaching, and lifestyle management speaking company. Prior to that, I was the CEO and founder of Corporate Fitness Works, which was a 30-year company of corporate health and fitness management. And soon I'll tell my story about how that came about and how I sold that business and acquired a company prior to selling Corporate Fitness Works.
Thank you, Brenda. Sara?
Hi, how are you? I'm Sara Apgar, founder and CEO of FitFighter. FitFighter is a direct-to-consumer fitness brand that originated in the fire service right here on Long Island, where I'm based. And my signature and patent pending product called the Steel Hose, which I have right here, just so you can see, is a strength training system, a free weight and resistance tool originally designed to help firefighters be stronger and better at movements for their job. We designed the Steel Hose from originally recycled and now combination of recycled and new fire hose filled with steel shot brass grommets on the end and stitched for this beautiful semi-rigid structure, which is a true category creator in the fitness space and in the strength training industry. I am an Army veteran, proud 4-year member of the Army Engineer Corps, volunteer firefighter, had a 5-year career building retail stores at Warby Parker, and now enjoying growing my new company, which also launched on Shark Tank November 13th, 2020, and can't wait to share that experience with you.
Thank you for your service, Sarah. Okay, moving along to Christina.
Hi there, Christina Novicki. I am CEO of Upstream Capital. We are a private equity group that focuses on the micro end of the lower middle market. So companies that are typically $1 million to $8 or $9 million in earnings, typically employees anywhere from 10 to 150, 200 employees. And we like to work with owner operators that are looking for growth equity or partial recapitalization or looking to make acquisitions in their industries. So we work arm in arm with owner operators to try to help them sort of capitalize on market opportunities and help them with strategic counsel and accretive acquisitions.
Thank you, Christina. Valentina?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Valentina Hantke. I am the founder of the Art Farm, New York City. My acquisition came with buying a partner out, and I have exciting information to share with you about branding. I think this was a perfect thing for me to be a panel on for word of mouth and marketing and branding. I'm in the education business. I do early childhood, I do summer camps, and marketing, branding, and word of mouth is obviously extremely important when you're taking care of the most precious things in the world, and that's people's children. So I'm excited to share my experience with you today. Being a CEO and an entrepreneur, I can see by our other panelists is you have to have the passion, and it looks like all of us ladies do, and I'm excited to be here today.
Thanks, Valentina. And I would totally agree. I do believe that you all have the passion, and I'm excited to hear the rest of your stories and for you to share them with the audience today. So moving along, we're going to have the presentation next, and then we'll go into panel conversation, questions and answers, and then I believe at the end, Winnie will wrap us up with some upcoming events. Is everybody able to see the screen well?
Yes.
Okay, great. So today we're going to be talking from a branding and marketing perspective about making any type of acquisition palatable. And there are a few times in an organization's history that are profoundly disruptive. Mergers and acquisitions are one of those times. So mostly when you think about buying or acquiring a company, you think about hiring an advisor, as Valentina had mentioned earlier, or you might think about human capital, or who are you buying, who are the people involved in the buying process, right? What are the employees like? Are they the right fit for the culture of your company? What attorneys do we need? Do we have the right financing? How do we get the right financing? What are the terms for leasing of a business, leasing of space, leasing of equipment? We might think about accounting and other business items, but rarely do we think about the purchase of the marketing and branding as part of that equation. But buyer beware, because actually that's one of the most important things for you guys to consider. So brand is vital to the core value of any company. When you are purchasing a company, make sure that you do your due diligence on that company prior to the purchase. And that involves like looking at the brand and how that brand sits in the marketplace and considering the brand's actual performance in the marketplace. And as we go deeper into this presentation, I will go through some things to look for, how you guys can do some of this yourself. And then also talk about a couple of different brand stories, things that are really good, things that weren't quite so good, and how you might learn to look at that data and control that data or change the narrative on that data and or the brand story in these situations. So generally what is considered a way to look and measure a brand's performance in the market is called a salient performance. So really what that means is when you're looking to buy a product, does the product's name become top of the mind to other people that are looking for your products or service? And I listed below 3 different examples of products that I felt had handled this quite well. So if you think about Apple, you immediately don't think of like this red apple that you can bite into necessarily. You immediately go to the brand, the innovative technology brand of Apple computer or Apple Macs, right? And then if you think you want to buy a nice car, you might think, hey, Mercedes, or you might think BMW. All of these brands have spent a lot of time and money, honestly, creating their brand narrative. And then also making sure that it's top of the mind awareness when other people are looking for those goods and services. So the more that you can do this for your company, the better your company will perform in the marketplace. There are quantitative brand metrics that you could use to assess the salient performance of that brand. So, looking at the brand awareness in the marketplace, what do customers remember about your brand? Maybe when you talk to Sarah, you might say, hey, she's the firefighter girl and she made the steel hose that probably I could never lift, right? But you have to have something that is going to connect with you, that's going to make your services come to the top of the mind awareness when people are thinking of purchasing from you. So you really also need to figure out, what do potential customers want to buy when they buy your brand? You may think about what type of services that you are using on a daily basis, personal hair products, or gasoline. What gas stations do you like to go to? Why do you like to go to those gas stations? What type of vehicles do you drive, right? And then you might also consider whether any of those brands have gotten into a negative response to their brand messaging in the marketplace. So for an example, when I mentioned to you Greenpeace, right? Greenpeace has both a positive and a negative message in the marketplace. And as we go deeper into this presentation, I will talk about some things that have happened in the marketplace that will talk to how you might look for ways to mitigate those circumstances if you were going to buy a company that might have a negative brand experience. So how to measure using a few simple steps prior to the acquisition of a business. So under the website traffic area, you might decide that you're going to look for the Google Analytics traffic on a business. So you log into their Google account and you look and see how many visitors they may have that's an organic visitor in comparison to a paid visitor. A paid visitor would be something that's acquired through an ad campaign. You might look for the different pathways through a website. The pathways through the site could indicate customers going to specific pages. They may be a product, there may be a person. If you talk to product or person, you can see what your biggest assets would be, and those would definitely factor into the sales process of the sale of the purchase of the business, that is. You might look at the country the traffic is coming from. And you also might look at locations that are a little bit more specific. You can certainly drill down from like a global perspective down to a regional perspective in that data traffic. You might look at the time that people are on pages. You might look at a bounce rate on a page. If you have a high bounce rate on a page, a person can simply go to that page and then want to leave because the information that's on that page is not relevant. So you could then determine you need to like refocus the content of that page. And then from a sales perspective, you really are looking at creating sales pages specifically in the e-commerce realm, and then making sure that they have the correct tracking codes that you can track and you know, relatively look at that data set aside from your website data. Once we go into social media, honestly, I feel like this is like its own presentation unto its own. But what's happening in the social media realm is there's a lot of conversations about brand and brand on social media, and then tracking and adjusting and mentioning and sharing of brand to build brand loyalty and evaluate the brand strategy in those arenas, right? So you might consider who you are talking to, who you're the person, the company that you are thinking about purchasing, who are they talking to, and how are you getting the people to respond to the messaging that you're putting out into the marketplace. Also adding in more positive pieces of information or positive feedback so that you can kind of keep your brand in place, right? You really want to kind of control that narrative as much as you possibly can and keep it as a very positive narrative. I do believe as we're going through this presentation, Andy's daughter was recently won an award, or was in the end game of winning an award for a company that she's working with. And I do believe that is to do with social media. So brand online, social mentions, that's the thing you really want to look at when you're looking at the social media of a company you're looking to purchase. Moving into social listening. So social listening is a whole game unto its own. These days with social media, you can also do social listening. And why would you want to do that? Because in the social listening realm, using specific keywords or key phrases and using smart thinking or artificial intelligence, you can train your social media channels and social media listening channels to listen for conversation, both in a positive way and a negative way, for early detection of any type of brand threats, and to mitigate any type of brand crises that you might see out there online when people are talking about you or your company. So why would you want to do that if you were thinking of just buying a business? Because you want to know if this is a good, solid business, and if the reputation of this business is a standalone, or whether or not there's chatter that might be happening online that you might not be aware of, and you know that you're going to have to mitigate that as you go deeper into the conversation about the purchase. Search engine optimization. There are a lot of tools that are available through long tail keywords, which are essentially a phrase. If you think about the dot or echo, they use long tail keywords. You can, through search engine optimization, actually determine the keywords your competitors are using. And you can then decide where this company you're looking to purchase sits in benchmark against your competitors in the marketplace. You can, if you put social listening, social media, and search engine optimization and website data traffic together, you now have a great set of information and data to build some benchmarks on the worth from a brand and marketing perspective of this particular company. In the marketplace, good, bad, or indifferent, there are over like 40 channels that you could use to market your company or this company you're purchasing. For each company that you are looking at and evaluating, there are the best matches in the channels. So for example, if you're marketing a product, you might decide you want to take that product to TikTok, We've all seen those great ladies legging pants that, you know, that are all the rage online. They have done very well on TikTok Marketplace. But if we were in the mergers and acquisitions space, that might not be a place where we would want to have a TikTok account because it would be difficult maybe to get some traction. So each marketing channel has its best matches. And, you know, when we talk about some of the top channels that you might consider using, they might be like Instagram or Yahoo or Google or your website, e-commerce, direct marketing. But with all of them, you should look to ways to measure the results in the marketplace with data. Each of them will provide data options to you. There are dashboards where you can take all that data and compile it. And you can see it at a top level as to what's happening with this particular account, you know, real time and also daily if you'd like to look at it differently. Frequency and reach is really how often a company is posting online, what platforms they are using, how many customers can you reach with an advertising campaign, and how often do you want to try to reach them. The more you reach them, the better chance you have of securing them as a customer. The last time I checked this data, you needed to reach them 11 times before they actually translated into a customer, unless you have like a really, really solid product that has brand recognition, and then it might be just a little bit easier. So what you can measure all the things we talked about before, your social media traffic, your search engine optimization, the cost per sale, the ROI, your return on your investment on that product, your conversion rates, your CRM sales leads, and together that can become part of your buying proposition. And then lastly, in this particular section, I definitely would look to the databases that they have, and do they actually own those databases? I think in a previous seminar that I attended, we talked about legal rights and who has ownership of databases. Make sure you build your own databases and you have ownership of them. So this is becoming more and more of the rage, unfortunately. And the reason I included this slide is because I wanted people to be familiar with looking for this type of behavior online. I'm sure you've all eaten out prior to the pandemic, maybe, but if you've ever looked at any restaurant reviews, you've often wondered, like, do I really want to eat there? Because they may have like thousands and thousands of reviews, but at least in New York City, when I looked the last time, 3/4 of them seemed like they were really negative reviews. And I'm not sure what that says about society, but I can tell you that it's very common to have a lot of negative reviews. It doesn't mean that it's really positive in any way, but it does happen to businesses. And I think that knowing how to navigate through them becomes an important part of the conversation, especially if you decide to buy a business with a negative brand behavior and you have to do the cleanup. So
Niki, I might just, this is Christina talking, I might just interject with a short anecdote there, because I think that's a really good point. When we're doing diligence to try to buy businesses, you know, some of those reviews from former disgruntled employees can come up talking about the corporate culture, the leadership of the business. And those can be fraught with, you know, specific agendas, particularly in some of these, you know, smaller companies that we invest in that may be, you know, 20 to 30 employees total. And, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 negative reviews can have a very material effect on either recruiting or even in the diligence process, thinking about brand and reputation and whether you actually want to buy the business that might be overtly skewed. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on ways to sort of dig into a potential bias that might be there. And one way we do it is we'll do customer calls and supplier calls and other kind of references, either those provided to us or those we dig up on our own, which are really good ways to tease out kind of the good from the bad.
Thanks, Christina. You're absolutely correct, right? So as Christina was alluding to, trying to get Google to remove a review is can sometimes be extremely difficult. And also you can go into the legal channels to try to get those reviews removed, especially if they were from previous employees. And actually having my notes to talk about previous employees. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be an easy way to remove those. It is an issue that is well known in the industry, and it very much happens across all businesses. So if you have not had a negative business review from a previous employee, count yourself lucky. Probably will happen in your future, I'm unfortunate to say. But I think that the pieces that Christina brought up were extremely valuable, because they definitely are different ways to evaluate the worth of a company without necessarily looking at a Google page and saying, oh my God, they have 250 negative reviews, when actual fact it was just one ex-employee that set up multiple accounts and made those reviews. So one of the other issues in the marketplace currently is the social media chatter, or known as WOM, word of mouth. I wasn't sure how many of you all would know what that acronym was, so I decided to include it. But essentially it's literally like gossip online, online chatter about a particular subject. You may have a difference of opinion with somebody, and they're going to incorporate your brand into that difference of opinion and have a lot of negative chatter online. The beauty of it, mind you, is that you can actually track all of this using social listening. So again, while you're looking at this business and trying to evaluate the net worth of this business, looking at the social media chatter, looking at the using active listening, you can often see that there's groups of people within a sphere influence that are just having this conversation. And the idea is either to distract those people or to actually change the narrative in that group if you can. So I wanted to bring up, just because I've been talking for a while, I give you guys a really great case study on this, right? And so I'm apologizing in advance to General Mills, but this has been in the Twitter sphere for like the last week. And it gives you a really good illustration of how this chatter gets out of hand really quickly. So the story goes like this. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Everybody loves that cereal, whether it's good for us or not, Sarah, right? But, most people like it. They've manufactured it well, right? And it's a kind of a great product in the marketplace. But I don't think any of us would really want to have it with shrimp tails involved. So there was apparently an incident that occurred with a musician and producer, and he shared on his Twitter account that he felt that he had found a package of Cinnamon Toast Crunch that had shrimp tails included. And of course that went viral. And last time I looked, it even made the New York Times. So General Mills kind of had their hands full trying to control that narrative. And they started off simply by saying, hey, it's probably like a glump of like cinnamon or a glump of sugar together. And, can you just send it back to us? And we're more than happy to send you a new package, whatever you'd like from us. But he kind of declined and said, no, I'd like to get an independent research done on this, right? And then the kind of narrative kind of spun from there. The moral of the story with this is you need a strategy to control that narrative. And even before if you see this narrative happening before buying the business, obviously you might get a price reduction on the purchase of this business if you have to do a lot of cleanup work. But I think that you have to be able to get your arms around what that narrative is as well before you can even determine what the net worth would be of the business that you're buying. Because that would involve like a lot of different cleanup and touching a lot of different sections. So you have PR, you have social media, you have web, plus you have to kind of control that sphere of influence and how that is kind of expanded. The idea is if an incident like this was to occur, to kind of control it and shut it down as quickly as you possibly can before it kind of spins out of control. So for my end of my story today, I wanted to share with you a beautiful story of Burt's Bees. And Bert, as you can see here, off to, I guess he's off to my left. I'm not sure if he's your right or your left, but he was this eccentric man that grew up on Long Island. He didn't really feel like he fit into life in the world. So he became a photographer for Time and Life magazine back in the day, went to live in Manhattan and really did not like Manhattan. So he left Manhattan and went to live in Maine in the 70s, of course. Grew out his hair, as you can see here. Doesn't look like it's been trimmed in a while. And then he learned the art of beekeeping. He was very happy with his hives. Once in a while, his hives got stolen. So what did he do? He put his name on the side, and the name of his hives were Burt's Bees. So everybody knew which hives were his. He branded them, right? And hence the name of the company. So he used to sell his honey out of the back of his truck. He made a pretty good little living. He was quite happy. He paid his bills, right? And then he met Roxanne. And Roxanne learned to make candles from the wax that the honey, the bees produce in their hives. But Roxanne had a totally different idea of how she was going to make money with Bert. So when she took her candles into the marketplace, they were an instant hit. They decided they were going to form a partnership. They sold more and more honey, more and more wax, right? They increased their distribution network. And then in the 1990s, I believe it was 91, they incorporated. So the story of Burt's Bees, right? He believed that whatever you put on your body needed to be the very best and the best that nature could offer. Hence why he probably moved to Maine and had like a relaxed lifestyle. So Bert never really shared Roxanne's passion for the growth of the company. He just wanted a simple lifestyle, but he did agree to become the face of the company. And as you can see here, that's his face on the Burt's Bees. And I'm sure you all have some of this product in your handbags or in your car, like, they have lip balm that people use. But with Roxanne involved, the company became more and more successful, and Roxanne became more and more ambitious. And in 1994, she moved the company to North Carolina, and then Bert eventually left the company, and Roxanne and Bert separated. So here's the important part. Roxanne bought out Bert in 1999, and she, 5 years later, sold Burt's Bees to AEA investors for $1.73 million. So you go from, beehives to $173 million. And then AEA investors sold Burt's Bees to the Clorox company in 2007 for $925 million. So key takeaways from that acquisition. They have a strong founding story because it's hard to beat. You have a great story, no one can beat that. The philosophy is grounded in that story and in the product that they produce in the marketplace. They have a great, strong proposition statement. A strong brand can survive strife and turmoil. They got divorced, they moved the company, right? They changed ownerships many, many times. And now, go figure, they're actually owned by Clorox, right? Who would have thought that? That seems so strange. They have an iconic brand and messaging. And they also have a connection to a charity, which is the Save the Bees movement. And guess what? Their growth was attributed to a strong presence on social media, Instagram in this particular case. So that's the end of my story for today. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope it gave you guys some things to think about. And now what I'd like to do is turn it over to our panelists. They've been very patient listening to me talk through all of this. And I'm going to start by opening up with Brenda. Brenda, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you. Thanks, Niki. So this is my story. And I think I'm going to start from the beginning because I think it's interesting as a woman-owned business to tell you how we got started. So my business partner and I, we attended a fitness and business conference. And keep in mind, this is pre-pandemic. And we decided we wanted to take fitness and wellness to where people spend most of their day at work. So we sent out inquiry letters. We're in Washington, D.C., and we found a company. And they said, okay, see if you can find some contracts. Lo and behold, in 3 years, we got GT Telenet, which became Sprint Rest in Virginia. And then United Telecom, which is Sprint World Headquarters in Kansas City, and Boston Properties. So after 3 years, the gentleman asked if we would buy back those contracts, and we did. And we started Corporate Fitness Works. And think about that brand, Corporate Fitness Works and at work. So it was a great name. Keep that in mind as we acquired another company. So we decided, since it was just the two of us, and we manage a 20,000 square foot on-site fitness centers. So we built the facilities, we equipped them, and totally operate and manage them. The client owned the facility and the equipment. It was our team that operated the facilities. We wanted to have a controlled growth and have 1 to 2 contracts per year over time. And then what we decided is that we couldn't compete as quickly as other companies because they bought other corporate fitness and wellness companies. So we decided and we're 30 years when we sold. So probably about 8 years before, we approached another woman-owned, there was only 2 of us in the whole country, and said, when you're ready, and if you're gonna sell your company, we'd be interested and like to be considered. Well, they didn't think we were big enough to buy them, and we were not considered. But we persevered. We decided we weren't going to give up because we felt similar cultures, similar values, women-owned, certified. Wouldn't it be great if we could women helping women? So we did. We ended up purchasing their company. And reason being, similar culture. I knew one of the owners for 30 years, so we knew all about them, and it really worked. And so we acquired them. And then 4 years later, we were asked to sell our company. And we tripled in size when we bought the other company, triple. So we ended up, started with 3 contracts, and our market share tripled. We went after Fortune 500 companies, retirement communities, residential communities, hospitals, property management companies, really every sector except school system. And so what was interesting, and I should have said, when we started our business, we knew we had no assets. No bank would give us a loan. So my business partner's mother gave us the loan. She took out a first mortgage of our house. Full circle now, when we bought and acquired this other corporate fitness management company, we got a loan because we had the financial stability, and they were BB&T Bank, which is now Truist, helped us purchase the other company. And so just recently we were purchased. And the team, and you talk about, Niki, what is the team? Let me tell you why the team is so important. Well, we had a bank, an attorney, CPA, and our vice president of finance was our team. And it proved to be very successful. And I just feel that lessons learned is match cultures, hiring to your values and your culture, working on your brand. We had a department of team that was our marketing and advertising and PR, which kept our messaging, as Niki talks about. The messaging is so important. So as we looked at our vision, mission, and philosophies and values, and succession plan, we made sure that our brand was consistent. And it's funny, Sarah, I do stretch and strength training. And what I realized at corporations as well as conferences, and I became the fitness lady. And so a lot of my colleagues knew my company, Corporate Fitness Works, the brand, because they knew we were all about health and fitness and well-being. And they really helped me grow my business by giving us leads because they knew our brand. And our brand became strong over time with the opportunities that I had as a certified women-owned business. And I'm really indebted to WeBank, which certifies if you're 51% women-owned, because we manage Toyota's Fitness Center, Dick's Sporting Goods, the Commerce, Energy. And so we had some really nice names, and we manage BB&T Bank's fitness centers. So we finished up with over 130 locations, 25 states, and close to 700 employees. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brenda. Sarah?
Hey, everyone. So I'm sure that there's going to be lots of super fun questions about what is it like to really be on Shark Tank and stand in front of Kevin O'Leary himself in the spotlight. And I'm happy to talk through that because it's lots of fun. Where I'd love to start actually is really 5 years ago. When a close friend of mine, Andy Jacobs, and I, who's the person who brought me here to this panel, were just really riffing and talking about the ideas that I had brought to the Hale Site Fire Department on Long Island for making volunteer firefighters better, stronger, and more prepared for their job. And I had joined the volunteer fire service originally because I had wanted to bring the camaraderie that I missed from my military days back into my life. I was now an executive at Warby Parker, pregnant with my first little girl, and I really missed the community. I missed the daily grind. I missed the lifestyle that I had in my first ever career in the Army Engineer Corps. But what I realized is, unlike the military, the fire service does not have centralized and standardized fitness training requirements. And so, as you've just heard, Brenda talk about, I mean, people think of this in the corporate world. They think of this in terms of our sedentary lifestyles of the general public. They don't think about, volunteer firefighters, professional firefighters, where there is truly still the same unique challenge that, to have that when their alarm goes off in the middle of the night, to be ready physically, mentally, and emotionally prepared to do that job was something that, I had to confront head on as someone who already had in my background that tactical athlete experience. So if I was feeling the strain of being prepared for this job, I knew that that my colleagues would as well. I started developing simple programs, strength, conditioning, power, mobility, grip strength ideas, and in doing so, stumbled upon a very simple and beautiful solution to strength training for the job, and that was to create a strength tool out of fire hose itself. So I started to fill fire hose with sand, with different kinds of grit, with little pebbles, anything I could think of, to create and mimic the feel of charged fire hose, charged with water so that we didn't have to drag hose to the hydrant, fill it with water, pull it off the trucks, something very logistically challenged to do. And yet that is the lifeblood of the fire ground. So then over the next couple of years, this became a garage hobby. I started to give my steel hose to firehouses all over Long Island. And then in what I feel was the phase one birth of the company, I cold pitched the FDNY Training Academy itself, the New York City Fire Department, on this idea for training at a high volume candidates for the New York City Fire Department. And fast forward, fun anecdote, over the past 5 years, every single firefighter who has entered the New York City Fire Department has trained with the steel hose and with our training system. So then over the next probably 12 months after that, I then had people outside the fire department knock on my door and say, could we use this to train lacrosse players? Could we use this to train my clients at Fit Body Boot Camp, my personal training clients? This seems like a very safe and versatile and durable way to have a strength training tool. That's a weighted tool, also a piece of resistance equipment. And by the way, you've got such an interesting program that goes with this. That's not just, sets and repetitions of, your average bicep curl, but instead actually truly novel way of moving and focusing on core stability and grip strength. Some of these things that are true markers of our health and wellness in the long term, and not just what we think of as fad fitness. So people started knocking on my door, and finally, January of 2019, after having some real heart-to-heart moments with Andy and my other co-founding members of this company, I thought, we've got a huge idea here and we need to give this a go. What's interesting about the next 2 years that transpired since that January 2019 is that in 2 short years, the company has evolved 3 to 4 times over. And when we think about building a brand and building a true legacy product, which is what I truly believe we have, now that I have the market feedback to prove it, we started with a B2B strategy. I wanted to seed our product, the steel hose, with trainers, coaches, and gyms. Fire academies, continue to work with the military, start to trickle down slowly into the general public, where I knew ultimately we could have the most impact because of the novelty of this tool. But we needed to have that trickle down because it's important to validate the product within the industry, validate the training and the program, so that this didn't become, the next handy gym or have a risk of being a product that would sort of be put in a closet, not used again, which we all know happens to so many different fitness training tools and equipment. And so then, when COVID-19 hit us all in March of 2020, we had just been 7 or 8 months to market at that point, did not have a huge brand following yet, had really slowly started to penetrate that B2B industry. And so we were forced, like everyone else, to make a huge pivot. And we launched our first ever Instagram Live direct-to-consumer training program based on that original training system. We started to send steel hoses to people's living rooms and garage gyms and the virtual training studios of personal trainers. And we launched our direct-to-consumer brand, which was, of course, a complete pivot from where we had started in the B2B market. And in May, the end of May of 2020, last year, got this amazing phone call from the Shark Tank producer team who had found us and loved the steel hose, loved the product. And in August of 2020, I had the opportunity to successfully pitch FitFighter on Shark Tank, and lots of fun, gory details about that pitch itself, which was taped. Daniel Lebetsky, who is the founder of Kind Bars, is my new partner in the company. And that investment really catapulted itself when we got that moment in the limelight, November 13th, and aired the show. We were able to then really put ourselves on the map. And now I'm thrilled that we're growing as not only continuing to still serve those original clients and continuing to serve fire academies, trainers, and coaches, but also now are growing a direct-to-consumer brand that I hope all of you will have in your living rooms, of course, momentarily after the presentation's over. So there's so many lessons here when it comes to the ability of an early stage company to keep putting one foot in front of the other, to see the signals of an industry, of a market, to pivot and recognize the competitive advantages that we have, which I'd be happy to talk more about, in our space, despite it being very, very crowded, and to ultimately achieve success in really coming up with a truly novel approach that I know will be the next 100-year brand. So now I've grown my team 5-fold in just the last 5 months. With that capital raise, we're looking towards another fundraise in the next 6 to 9 months that I look forward to taking us to the next level of the company.
Thanks, Sara. And then Valentina.
Hi, thank you for having me today. I am the owner and founder of the Art Farm in New York City. The Art Farm is a nature-based education program. I started my business about 19 years ago this past February. I started it with another woman. My background's in music education, and I was a Board of Education New York City music teacher. And in the summers, I was vacationing out with my friends. I just graduated from college. I'm from New Jersey, but my Long Island friends introduced the Hamptons to me. So that's how I met my now ex-business partner. She had a summer camp out there called the Art Farm, and I ran her early childhood music program for her. The first summer was great, and I think for anybody out there that wants to own their own company or is looking for the opportunity to start a company or buy a company, you never know who's watching. You never know who wants to invest in you. And this person saw something in me and said, I want to start a program and bring music and art and nature into Manhattan, and I would love you to be my working partner. So I made the decision to tell the Board of Ed that I would be taking a leave of absence, and I started figuring out and created a curriculum. So we leased a space in 2002. It was right after 9/11, and that was the year that I didn't go back to teaching. And I was thinking, should I go back to teaching? Should we forge ahead? But like Sara had said, and Brenda had said, when you make the decision and you know that you want to do something, just keep going. So we did, and we opened in February of 2002. I was in Manhattan running the business with my education background, and she was a silent partner, and it was her idea to bring nature and animals to the program. And I had been raised in New Jersey around gardens, and so nature was prevalent, but she had the whole animal piece and I had the children piece, and we brought it all together. So I was running the company in Manhattan, and she had her camps out on Eastern Long Island, and we started to grow apart. I was doing the day-to-day in the trenches, starting a new business, working partner. I was a teacher, and I never ran a business before. When we did birthday parties, we did Mommy and Me classes, music programs, summer camps. We were breaking into small preschool programming. Anybody that knows Manhattan, Upper East Side clients aren't the easiest clients, so I was learning on how to manage all of that. So I became pretty successful at it, and I saw, like people were saying, like where were places, what were my clients wanting, where were ways that I could grow, what did people need, what were the needs of my clients, and how could I grow the company. So we were about 10, 11 years into it, and at this time I'm now starting my own family, and I just really started to realize that I was doing all the work and I wanted to grow this company, and we at that time were 50-50 partners, and it didn't make sense for me to grow with her. So I brought that to her and I said, you know, you were the investing partner, I've been the working partner. The company is where it is at this time because I'm here working and growing it. And I said, you know, are you interested in reinvesting so we can expand? And she said, no, we're going to go out together and get our own loan. And at that point I said, well, then I need to have our equity share needs to be different. We're not 50-50 partners because we're the money partner and I'm the working partner, and those roles aren't what they are anymore if you're not going to keep investing in the company. And she said, well, then you're going to just have to buy me out. And that's how it went. And that kind of leads me to advisors. I didn't know how to buy somebody out. It was a complete divorce. It was really hard. And Ken, who brought me to this, and Rick from the growth team, is I needed advisors. I couldn't fight that battle by myself. It took us probably about 3 or 4 years to buy her out. Attorney, accountant, you know, job coach, CFO. So it really is really important to have people that you click with personally, that believe in you when you're acquiring a company or when you're selling or when you're going through a buyout. Because I know I am not the only business owner that has had a break with a difficult business partner. So we succeeded and we got through that. And then talking about the branding and the logo and the word of mouth, it was all of my hard work that did that. So I knew that this was something, and I believed in it because I had to invest my money and do a buyout loan. And but I knew it was the right thing to do. And once we got through that, I redesigned the logo because her and I disagreed on the logo. I was in Manhattan and she was out on Eastern Long Island, and the Manhattan client was a different person than the Eastern Long Island person that lives out east all year long. So I was excited to rebrand the company. My advisors told me about a CRM. I had no idea what a CRM was before. And that also led to, my customer relations management product also did a new website, does all my Google Analytics, does all the things like we were talking about this day and age, which is so important on the chatter out there and what people are talking about, and making sure you're always in a positive light. And, you're going to get those negative Yelp reviews. There's always a disgruntled person out there. And when you're a business owner, you take it to heart. And how do you, respond to that the right way so the outside world is looking at that and sees that, oh, okay, that person was having a bad day because the art farm or the company is responding and is handling it. So all of those things are really important, whether like Niki was saying, as you're going in to buy a company, you really have to drill down and look at all of that because customers are looking at all of that. And then when it is yours, how do you build it up and how do you keep that reputation, especially when you're in the service industry like myself, especially when you're selling a premium service, a high-end service. It's taken very seriously, and Art Farm does a lot of camps and childcare programs and birthday parties, and we're doing really, really special moments. We have a USDA licensed petting zoo that's part of the nature piece. So all that we do involves animals. And we have people from our team, from the Bronx Zoo, that have been on our team for about 10 years that take care of the animals and do the animal education is intertwined with all of our programming, and families get nature as a part of everything that they get in New York City. And that also is something different, what is different. And of course, there's a lot of camps out there. There's a lot of programs. There's a lot of schools and places to have your kid's birthday party. But what is making your program different or your company different, and highlighting that and how to market that. So I think that's pretty much mostly everything that I wanted to touch on today. But to have a successful business, and I'm in the middle of growth right now. I've undertaken growing a new facility in the middle of a pandemic, which has been hard, but again, perseverance, and haven't given up, and looking forward to the light at the end of the tunnel and opening our new center. But all of the things that have been spoken today by the CEOs and by Niki, being an entrepreneur for the past almost 20 years, really resonate and are true. And thank you for having me.
Thanks, Valentina. And last but not least, Christina, right? I know Christina has a lot to offer because this is actually her background, according to her bio.
Thanks so much. And it's interesting, if you pull the thread on what Brenda, Sara, and Valentina said, I do think a couple of key themes sort of resonate. And one is something that a good friend of mine says, who's a very successful hedge fund manager. And she always says, surround yourself with excellence. And if you surround yourself with really good people that are passionate about what we all do and a shared vision, that's obviously sort of the key game changer in terms of building your organization. And for me on the private equity side, finding companies to buy that are really interesting. I think, the other point in terms of COVID-19 and how on some level, we've all had to reinvent in some ways who we are and what we do. I do think the ability to be quick and nimble and plant and pivot is a really important part of a success driver for me on the private equity side of my organization, but also in terms of the portfolio companies that I work with. I actually started off my career right out of college as a journalist for a magazine that you may or may not have heard of in the mid 90s called Fast Company, which was started by 2 editors of the Harvard Business Review. And as they described it, when people would ask for their vision of the company, they said, I knocked my head on the side of my desk and 2 magazines fell on my face. One was Fortune and one was Rolling Stone. And so of that vision was born a really strong community in the 1990s, a particularly interesting time to be a part of a startup magazine when George Magazine, Business 2.0 and Wired was getting started, and certainly sort of the beginning of the sort of internet boom. We were writing about a little Austin-based company called Bread and Circus, which is now Whole Foods. And there was an interesting article in 1997 in Fast Company. I was the first employee of Fast Company, which was a really great experience in my 20s. But Tom Peters wrote an article called The Brand Called You. And it was particularly interesting because I think what's resonated with what everyone's talked about today is, you never know when you're going to meet the next investor. You never know when you're going to resonate with the next owner operator, and keeping yourself open to those opportunities and open to embracing change, I think is really important. From there, I went on to Bank Boston Capital, which was the private equity arm of what was then Bank Boston, $3.5 billion under management across sectors and across different stages of investing. And then went to a variety of other large private equity and small growth oriented firms, including Brown Brothers Harriman. 7 years ago this summer, I spun out and started Upstream Capital, saw an interesting pocket in the market, which I think is the last of the inefficient pockets where you can find interesting small companies. Our strategy is we don't do early stage investing, but we like small companies that have been around a long time, that want to do something where it's not necessarily about being sold or buying something else, although that's part of it. But there are many different nuances of deals that we can do where it's a partial recapitalization, it's a merger, it's a growth strategy. And it's a really sort of intimate experience to go through that process with an owner operator where it's, potentially emotional. Some of them fall back in love with their own companies and decide not to sell. Others decide to roll considerably more equity, which is always really interesting to us. And our core competency is trying to find sort of opportunities in weakness. So where they may not reinvest money in sales and marketing and branding because they're pulling out capital for themselves, they still have a really strong business, but they're looking for a partner who's going to help take them in a strategic direction that's going to have more of a multiplier effect. In some cases, they're small business owners that are sort of strategically lonely and want to create a board and have maybe reached their complexity ceiling and recognize that more smart people around the table are a good thing. And we think we can be a good partner there. So, a couple of key things that we do when we look at businesses to try to make them better and prepare them for a sale once we get invested in them. We look at certain processes. It's a pretty elementary way to look at it, but it's actually, there's some beauty in the simplicity of it. We look at, what of the processes in this business do we need to stop because they're hurting the company? What do we need to start in order to propel a company? And what do we need to continue that we're doing really well? And then a lot of it sort of ties back to data, and it ties back to the ability to measure, monitor, and hold accountable. The people within the organization, ourselves, and our partners out in the market.
Thanks, Christina. So Winnie, I would be remiss in not reintroducing you, right? So Winnie, I'm going to let you steal the show for a little while, as you're very good at, And would you like me to put the slide back up, or are you okay without the slides?
It depends on what it is that you would like. At this point, you are going to go into the Q&A, right? Do we have individuals in the Q&A, Niki, that I can bring on? Or do you
I think we're open to questions at the moment.
Yes.
So anybody that has any questions that they'd like to ask either myself, Winnie, or Kyle, or any of the panelists.
Well, I would like to start with the first question on the subject of branding. I believe our panelists, they have done a great job sharing their experience and their journey, which is just absolutely awesome. I'm so excited and proud of all of them. One of the questions I want to ask is what part of that journey they recognized that branding was the way they branded themselves was actually part of their success. That's a question I'd like to, throw that out. Of the stories they've shared, which is awesome, was there a time where they thought that branding, or were they cognizant of branding?
I think that's a great question, Winnie. I am going to say that I think that that's a good question for Brenda to answer.
Okay.
Because she's had quite a lot of experience of that. Not only just the branding of the company, but the branding and how that applied to culture, because her culture and her branding wasn't just contained within her own company. It was also something that was utilized offsite, and which is extremely challenging to do.
Yeah, Niki remembered, Winnie, that the hardest thing, I think, for our business, picture this, that when we hired and trained our team, they learned about our own cultures and all that goes into our culture, corporate fitness.
Awesome.
But then they were on site full time at Toyota, and they had to learn about that culture. And so part of the branding is to, and I think it's a great question, because we had to differentiate ourselves from our client's culture, and then help the employee of ours to understand our culture, our values, and what that meant for them. But the hardest thing, Winnie, because we empowered our employees, their team, and so if they're in Texas and I'm in Florida, there's no way that I can influence them and teach them and help them unless I'm with them. So one of the things that we had to really help is, how do you sustain your culture and your values off-site at a client site? And we did that. We had ongoing training. We had discussions with our employees, so they really understand the differentiator of who we were and who they were working for. And the other thing I will say that I did, Niki, this is up your alley. We changed our actual brand, our logo, and we probably had over 30 years, because the first one was free, a friend of a friend, right? Because he couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And then, so we ended up, which I love what we ended up with, but we had a total of 3 logos, brands that we used over time. But back, Winnie, to emphasize when, I would say early on, because I associated brand with culture and our competitive advantage. I put that all together. That helped me understand. Keep in mind, I didn't say this early on. I was a teacher as well, by the way, and specialized in heart disease. So I didn't know all this. I had to learn it on the job training and, of course, some workshops and so forth. But I will tell you, I really think brand has to go first in part of your, because we consulted with a brand and marketing company early on. So they became our coaches in the brand arena. I hope that helped.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to hog all the questions because we have a few here. We have a question for Valentina. What was your interest in approach on direction of the Art Farms branding strategy after buying out your former partner, and why? That's Valentina. Should I repeat the question, Valentina? You unmute yourself.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
Thank you for the question. I think it's any business that's evolving, and some other things had come up of when you have to pivot your company. And when Niki brought up the, sorry, there's something on my screen here. Niki had brought up an acquisition is a huge disruption. I'm like, yeah, it's huge, especially when you're moving along and whoa, it's a lot. So for me, I just couldn't wait for this company to be my own. And I had so many ideas, and I was tired of the battle of, you know, when you're in the trenches and it's yours and you're making sure those clients are happy every single day and you're working one-on-one with people, and then somebody else wants to come who's, you know, not working with you day to day in your environment, says, that's not how you should sell that. That's not what our logo should look like. This is what our ad should look like. And none of it made any sense. And it was extremely frustrating. So what we had a graphics designer that worked for my partner out east and also worked for the city location. And she knew that my ex-partner and I were very different. And when it was time, when the separation was done, legally everything was over, and I could really brand my company the way I wanted to, I had somebody that already knew me and knew the company. So I did talk to a couple other people about my new logo. Advice that I got was keep it simple, keep it limited to limited colors, you know, 1, 2, 3 max colors, have it something there, what you want them to have a feeling when they're looking at your logo. You want something in your logo to remind them of your company when they see it. The most favorite animal that all the kids love when they come to the art farm is a rabbit. So we have a rabbit in our logo. So that was the branding piece, and it just evolved with time and as the company grew. And as you'll see, I just noticed that Amazon changed their logo. They just changed their logo. So, I mean, I was like, whoa, they have a new logo, but they, I guess, were evolving. And so, you know, you can go through a logo change. It's exciting to launch a logo change, whether ownership is changing. I would think if you're taking it over and you don't like the logo, don't be afraid of changing it. It can spotlight the company. It can be an exciting thing to do. And then, you know, then just spinning off and moving into CRMs and doing all the Google things and changing my website and all of that just aligned as well and really pivoted catapulted the company to the next level.
Awesome. Thank you, Valentina, especially when you mentioned the fact that you were very cognizant that the logo must represent the activity of the brand. So I think that was so awesome. Another question for Sara and anyone else on the panel. How do you make your message resonate in a concise way and have a hook? Further, in raising capital, any advice for women in getting access to capital and networking with a potential investor? So there are really 2 questions right there. What's the hook? How do you make your message resonate in a concise way and have a hook? That's one. And then, of course, raising capital or any advice for women in getting access. So, and that's for Sara or anyone else who might be able to chime in.
Sure. So first of all, I'll say that this is sort of the only question, you know, when it comes to the brand, because you can have a great idea, and something that Andy and I talked about, you know, ad nauseum early on. You can have, there have been some of the best ideas in the world, right, in all kinds of industries, and they're ideas that never make it to market, never come to the mainstream because they're not communicated the right way, or in a way, I should say, in a way that resonates with people. And so what we have done is we have worked from the beginning. The answer to this question is that there's not a single answer that's going to then sustain you, I think, for the duration of the growth of the company and the brand. You know, in my experience, what this has been is figuring out how to resonate with people who are in your market in a way that they immediately see themselves in you and in your brand and in what you're doing. And, you know, so an example is, you know, for me, one thing I learned early on is it seemed very obvious to me that given that I had the best folks in the business in our industry validating our product and our training, you know, and these were sort of the influencers everyone turns to. That doesn't mean that in the mainstream, the general public was resonating with what I was doing. So in that first year and a half, it would amaze me that people would think that this was a firefighter's workout. And then they think, oh gosh, you know, that's not for them. And so what we realize is to translate, which is the opposite of what ultimately the steel hose is turned into this beautiful, simple tool that the general public can benefit from. In fact, people who are often seen as the farthest apart from the demographic of firefighters, you know, who are folks who are older and have arthritis in their hands because the grip is very beautiful. Folks that, you know, prenatal and postnatal moms who have, you know, abdominal pain and have toddlers at home, and dropping a kettlebell is a very unsafe thing to have, you know, in your living room. And so what we realized is that we had to learn, continue to just push and push and push out into the market and constantly get feedback until we learned what was resonating with people. And what about the brand, and then the practical nature of the product or service you have is what people care about. And so a great example of a hook that's now become this sort of this widely marketable element of our product is the fact that this is really safe. This is the safest freeway. This is a flexible freeway. Soft on the outside, firm on the inside. Drop it hard on your toes. It's not going to hurt. Slide it under your couch. Fit for the living room. You know, families with toddlers, this is one of the things that we get as the primary piece of feedback about the product. That's not the thing that we were thinking about when we had steel hoses in the firehouse. I mean, there's, you know, everything is sort of unsafe. Like, it's just not the thing that people care about. So the hook is entirely about resonating with what people care about and with what is valuable to them in their lives, not what's valuable to you, but what's valuable to them. And so that's sort of like that's what I would say in terms of how both what the hook is and how you understand, you know, how you communicate it to people. I hope that answers the question. Can you repeat the second question, Winnie?
The second question had to do with the capital. How do you go about raising the capital and what women can do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Raising the capital, any advice?
Yeah. So I'll just give some thoughts, because I think that the answer is also there's 100 of different ways to capitalize your company. There's, you know, so for us, what I decided was, you know, my recommendation is that you start with a path of least resistance. Think if at the very beginning, you're thinking you're going to sort of charge up the hill with your sword, you know, raising millions of dollars from, you know, venture capital, there is absolutely solutions in, you know, biotech or high tech companies, right, that are valued very, very high, very early on, healthcare. But I would say probably 90-something% of companies, a better way to go is that you've got to get your feet, you know, under you, and you've got to get off the ground, get your product out to market. And so I started with a friends and family fundraise with also distributing a small amount of equity to the people who came on board to work with me as a founding team early on. So I really used equity as my currency. And then also raised a friends and family round that would allow me to get off the ground. And then now, of course, are approaching, you know, 2 years into the company's history with a proof of concept in the market and some infrastructure in place. Now we're looking to raise, you know, that big fundraise. For women, there are great resources out there. There are foundations and associations, women's forums of CEOs and investors who are really friendly to women-owned companies, and that's great. Women support women, right? And so that's something that you, with some LinkedIn diligence, you know, and work, and I'd be happy to pass along some of the associations that I know about, is a great way to just kind of have conversations and understand the world of capital. And then finally, there's debt funding. The SBA has debt funding if you're a certified women-owned company. That's a great way to go too, again, so that you can really just get off the ground and get the train leaving the station. That's my strong recommendation.
Wonderful. Okay. So we have more questions, but this program could definitely not be made possible without a team. And of course, we have to lead by example, the M&A network organization, right? Because sellers and buyers need to also understand the importance of working with a team. So we're going to start by mentioning the individuals who are on the M&A educational team. So we start with my chair, and of course, he is none other than Ken Pichel, who is a fractional CFO of Dynamic Business Consultants. All right, followed by our member, Andy Jacob, creative marketing strategist of Gravitas. Then we also have our other member, Roy Pelicano, CIO, IT consultant and business advisor of Triangular Consultant. And last but not least, member Austin Bransgrove. He's a managing associate and certified exit planner of Rethink Wealth. You will see those logos actually at the bottom. But all of this could not have been made possible, the vision and dream of this awesome team of trusted advisors, had it not been for the awesome Kyle Griffith, who is the founder of M&A, and he's a certified business intermediary and managing partner of the NYBB Group. Ladies and gentlemen, let me see you give some love, some claps, some thumbs up for our team. Okay.
Thank you very much, Winnie. It's such a spectacular event. Appreciate Niki and yourself and the rest of the team and the speakers. I mean, I love hearing the stories. I mean, Christine and I banter back and forth. We are working on a deal together, and I love hearing the evolution of the start of a company to the growth to the time when folks looking to exit and transition. Just really fires me up. So that's one of the main reasons why we put M&A together, to put together a team, a mastermind of trusted advisors. And as many of you guys can see, you know, from all the CEOs here that I mentioned, they all have representatives that help them take their company to the next level. Sarah's working with Andy, Valentina was working with Ken. Brenda, I know Sharon is still on. I know Sharon and you are close friends. I know Brenda had a lot of mentors along the way. And Christina mentioned her work with Fast Company. When I think of Fast Company, one of my first jobs way back was at Hudson News. That's my first introduction to Fast Company. So some fabulous stories. But with that being said, I just want to make note of our next event that's coming up on April 29th. We're going to be talking about bankruptcies. We're going to have attorney Robert Nosek. I believe Robert is on with us. So I'd love Robert to maybe jump on for a minute or so and kind of give us a prelude of what we can expect for this coming event. I don't think Stephen's with us today, but Robert, if you mind taking yourself off mute. And every month we have these forums and different topics. The one prior was in business planning. We spoke about EOS. Prior to that, we talk about financing and PPP. And before that, we talk about HR and IT. So every month we have different topics. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, bankruptcy is a very hot topic. So we figure this is a very timely topic for attendees and CEOs. So Robert, are you with us? You want to take yourself off mute and give folks a quick overview of what we can expect on April 29th?
I am. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to give the brief overview for what we got planned for the end of April. As you mentioned, you know, obviously with what's been going on in the last year, bankruptcy is, you know, a hot topic. And the approach that we're going to take for our presentation is looking at it from a standpoint of businesses that want to grow their business. And there are different ways to do that, such as buying assets that are currently in a bankruptcy and going through that process. Or you may have a competitor or just somebody else that's a distressed company and you like their product line or you like the overall business and you want to acquire it. And the strategy would be to put them into bankruptcy with you exiting with their assets, either as a going concern, or it might just be individual assets such as a product line, large scale equipment, or maybe a building. And then the other thing that we think we will be talking about is for those of you that are in or approaching a distressed situation, some of the avenues that bankruptcy provides you in a positive way. Bankruptcy, a lot of times, obviously, is seen as it is a avenue of generally of last resort. You try to obviously work out with your creditors as much as you can. What we've been seeing in the marketplace is, at least during the pandemic, landlords to an extent have been working with their tenants, as well as certain lenders have. How long that's going to last is yet to be seen. Obviously, a lot of the market is being driven by these moratoriums on foreclosures and evictions, for instance, which is kind of slowing down that process. But people are being able to work out deals with their creditors. Once those moratoriums lift, at that point, we'll be seeing an acceleration. But we'll briefly touch on a couple of the different ways that you could use bankruptcy in a positive way to right-size your business, and doing it in a proactive manner, so that the business can continue as a going concern. Or if you choose to get out of the business, a structured liquidation. So that's kind of, on the bankruptcy side, what we'll be talking about. I'm thrilled to be able to have Stephen White of Onyx Partners Group joining me. And during what I'll be talking about, there are certain periods of time during the bankruptcy process that valuation becomes very important. And people like, Stephen and his firm are key players in that, and he'll be able to present his viewpoint on some of those things. So excited to be able to address the group at the end of April. And that's kind of generally what we're going to be talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Appreciate it. Then Winnie and Niki, I'll turn it back over to you both to wrap things up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle. So Winnie, did you want to jump in real quick?
Yes, we have a few more questions that I do not want to miss. And one is, of course, in the chats, it rolls over each one, but I will get back to it really quick here.
I did see one of those really interesting questions in there too.
Yes, please.
Would you mind if I attempted to answer this?
Sure, absolutely. Ask it.
Okay, and so let me just find it as well. I believe it was Ronnie that asked the question.
Yes, that's the one I was looking for.
That's the one you were looking for too.
Yes.
So I actually, when I was doing research for this presentation, this was exactly what came up in that research, and I kind of remembered that when I saw this question come up in the chat. So Ronnie's question is, when you purchase a business, how do you keep the mission and value after the sell? And is there a way to keep your customers from leaving the business, right? So one of the things that I had extensively read about was, when you first acquire a business, not to necessarily, throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. So, keep the employees for a little while, keep your marketing company for a little while. Look at what the Pareto's principle is for that particular company, right? Knowing that, most of the revenue are going to come through like 20% of those sales. So once you've stabilized the onboarding of that company, and you've evaluated and done your due diligence on that sale, then start to look at how you might gently change over some of the structure of that company. And I think that what will happen is, as you've gone through and looked at the branding and marketing of that new company, you can softly then address some of the issues that you can see, but they don't have to be quick and they don't have to be sudden. And I think that that will help you, keep in touch with the community that business has served, and hopefully you will still be relevant to that community. So I hope that answers the question.
May I add to that just a quick note? Something that, depending on the nature of your business and the face of your business and how much the principals are the face of the business, it's not uncommon for the acquiring, the purchaser of the business to keep one or more of the principals on under some type of a consulting agreement, maybe for the first year or so, just so that the goodwill, the customers still see that this person is involved in the business, and it just really, that person slowly, fades into black, and that is a good key for helping to maintain your customer base.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I 100% agree. It's absolutely the truth. Yes. So Winnie, would you like to, I'm sorry, I feel like we're stepping over each other, but go ahead.
Well, no, that's fine. It's just that we are approaching our hour. We just have 1 minute to wrap up, and we do know that there are other questions in there. And so we just want to answer one more, and then we have to close. And just know that your questions are not ignored. As a matter of fact, right now, we can't even answer another question. So all I can do right now, Niki, is turn it over to you so that you can wrap up with your panel, because they were just absolutely awesome. Everyone else, we are going to answer your question via your email, so you're not forgotten. Thank you so much for your patience, and we definitely looking forward to seeing you again next month. But Niki, over to you so that you can close with your panelists.
Well, Winnie, thank you so much for co-hosting with me today. I think that you really did that very, very well. And to the panelists, I have, you ladies did an amazing job. I thank you so much for being part of this and for taking time out of your schedule. I feel that you all are role models to the younger generations that are coming up behind us all. And I look forward to working on another panel with you. Of course, none of this would be possible without Kyle and his group of Eminae and the advisors. So thank you very much.